Have you ever prayed for a miracle? God, heal me from something. God, change my heart. God, spare me from this terrible thing. I used to pray all the time, God, please make me a different person when I wake up in the morning. It's a pretty common thing to pray for miracles. And oftentimes, what we're asking for is usually something pretty instantaneous, right? So, how do you feel when that doesn't happen? Do you feel like you did something wrong? Or that maybe for some reason you're just not good enough for God to grant you that? Or maybe you feel like God isn't who you thought he was. Or maybe even that he doesn't exist. I think these are all common reactions to our prayers for miracles not happening. And I think they all stem from this really common belief that God is in the business of magically or miraculously or instantly changing our lives. And while there certainly are stories about that happening, you may even know a person or two that has experienced something like that. They're really rare. Those kind of things are really, really rare. And it seems to me that more often than not, God walks us through things rather than spares us miraculously or magically from them. So there's this ancient story in the book of Daniel about three men named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You may have heard it. So at this time in history, the people of God are living in exile in Babylon under foreign rule. And the king of Babylon, a guy named Nebuchadnezzar, creates a law that basically says at various times of the day, when you hear a certain sound, everyone has to stop what they're doing and bow down and basically pray to or worship statues of me. Everyone has to stop what they're doing and worship me. And refusal to do so, or practicing any other religion, will get you killed by being thrown into a fiery furnace. So essentially, if you don't worship the king or you worship anyone or anything else, you will be killed by being burned alive, which is pretty intense. And as the story goes, there's these three Jewish men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refuse to bow down and worship. They refuse to stop worshiping God. And so they're arrested and they're taken before the king and they are thrown into this furnace, this fiery furnace. At some point, the king or his guards go in to look and like see how are things progressing. Are they dead yet? And what they see is four, not three, four men who are walking around the furnace unharmed. And so the king freaks out and knows that he's done something wrong. And he pulls the three men out and says, "What is going on? Like, this is crazy." And they explain that God has spared them from the furnace. And that that makes the king decide to believe in their God and change the law so that everyone can practice whatever religion that they want to. So now, while that story has a miraculous aspect to it, what I find interesting is that they still have to go into the furnace. God doesn't spare them from the flames. You would think that God could miraculously, just miraculously change the king's heart and so that he changes the law so that they never get thrown in there in the first place, or that the furnace would magically break, or that somehow fire would just stop working in that place. But that's not what happens. They have to go through the flames. But God walks them through that and saves them through their trials and through that fear and suffering of not knowing whether you're going to come out of there alive or not. I think that's actually a great metaphor for how God tends to operate in our lives. He tends to walk us through our difficulties, our hardships, our suffering, our pain, more than miraculously saving us from it. So next time you find yourself praying for a miracle, or maybe if you are currently praying for a miracle that doesn't seem to be coming, I don't want you to be discouraged and think that there's something wrong with you, or that God is mad at you, or that God just isn't there at all. Instead, I want you to be encouraged that God is walking alongside of you through what you are going through. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 1 that God is walking alongside us, keeping us on track, that he will never give up on you. Never forget that, Paul writes. So even when you find yourself enduring flames, even when you find yourself walking through fire, remember that God is walking alongside of you. Never forget that.